Before this episode aired, rumors were circulating that this episode would have no flashbacks. After a while, we learned that it would have flashbacks, but on island, like we saw with Michael last season. So I will do this all chronologically. We open up with Anthony Cooper, who bites Locke's hand. Tom tasers him. Richard just goes away. I never noticed this, he just goes down here and isn't seen anymore. So that means he went through the red door and followed the hallway around here and went up the second staircase. I mentioned in my episode on The Man from Tallahassee that Ben's house has 2 staircases. Ben invites Locke to the ruins with the others.
We're going to a new place. Well, an old place, actually.
At some point, Ben has his meeting with Juliet. When you look at the size of everything at their next camp, the fact that they even brought this cupboard with bookshelves might mean that they had a storage space for these types of travel. Maybe the tents are stored over here or something at the old security office. They turn off the fence, walk through it, and then turn it on again. And then they trek down here. They pass the river and maybe there's a bridge in this area, then turn down south before heading east towards the ruins. Let's deal with some off-screen stuff. Since this episode skips a bit in time, we have a 3-day jump without any action at the beach camp. Juliet goes to Jack's tent to tell her about Ben's plan. This is mentioned in the show, but we see this first in a mobisode.
I'm still working for him. For Ben. He sent me here to study the women to find out which ones were pregnant.
Off screen, they will devise a plan. Danielle is also traveling. She's been up here outside the submarine dock and is now heading back south. Danielle is the person Jack is looking after. In an off-screen scene, he and Juliet will go somewhere to find her. Maybe he would go to one of her old traps and just yell into the jungle until he meets her. Or he will do like Kate did, go to the area of her old bunker. This part of the island is quite large. It has 2 giant mountains, an enormous gorge, and is the area with the most traps. Saeed falls in one, Hurley almost gets pierced, Saeed explodes her shelter, and Charlie almost gets an arrow in the neck. It's an easy explanation to say that she is still in the same area, but I think it works. This is an area where she's well protected from the others. This is how Kate found her, and this is how Jack will find her. So my theory is that Jack and Juliet went here. Interestingly enough, they wouldn't be too far away from this group. They agree that they will meet up with Danielle again in 3 days to further discuss the attack the others plan. Another off-screen trek, since Richard is the one to bring up the tape with the instructions, I believe that he might be the one to go to the medical station to retrieve it. So he goes down south to the station, enters it, goes into the secret room, retrieves the tape, and then heads back north towards the ruins. This is 5 days after. Even though Locke is here and fixes Cindy's tent, it's not like they've just set up camp. They haven't walked for 5 days. They've already been here for several days. However, tents always need maintenance, tightening ropes and so on, especially if there was some bad weather the night before. The others camp at the ruins. This is the first and only time we are at this location. I've placed it here so it matches Danielle's map. I believe this is the ruins of ancient origin that she's marked here. The pillar is Doric, and the whole layout reminds me of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. I mentioned it back in my video about One of Us, and the symbol that was at this temple in ancient Greece is the Delphic epsilon, and marked on that tree. By closer examination, this place had 4 pillars, with only 1 standing. If you have visited sites with structures from ancient Greece, you've seen how dilapidated they've become over time. So I don't think we should read too much into why 1 is still standing and the other 3 are broken. Just take a look at the remains of the Temple of Dioscuri in Agrigento with a similar style. We can debate on when the ruins were built, but since the columns are in a Doric order, and the Doric order was the predominant type of temple on the Greek mainland and among the Western Greeks of Sicily and southern Italy, the essential elements of this style had been put in place by the middle of the 6th century BC. Since it has a Doric style, it could have been built by a population of Greeks from before the events of Across the Sea. Maybe Mother came from this group. Jacob also had a lot of Greek lines in his tapestry, which showed a bit of history on the island, so maybe some people came after Jacob was born.
You got a minute?
Yeah.
Ben's asking for you. Okay.
Tom sends Locke to Ben. Ben listens to the tape that Juliet made. Ben tells Locke that the island's secrets can only be revealed after Locke has made an act of commitment by killing Anthony Cooper. That night, Ben wakes Locke to kill Cooper. The event here tonight further emphasizes the others as a cult. The French sociologist Emile Durkheim says the cultic acts of worship are the most important things the people of the clan undertake. They are sacred, all else is profane. Their purpose is always to promote consciousness of the clan, to make people feel part of it, and to keep it in every way separate from the profane. Durkheim separates the ideas of cults into two factions, positive and negative. The negatives are riddled with restraints, prohibitions, and taboos. Taboos in this case means protection of certain locations.
Listen to me. Hey, listen to me. Hey, listen carefully. No one goes in there unless Jacob invites him in.
Locke represents the opposite. Durkheim highlights an aspect of a positive cult as people who perform an intercumia, with rituals above sacred totems, with ceremonies that might resemble a communion meal where a totem creature is seized, killed, and eaten in a sacred meal. The worshippers therefore give life to the gods, and the gods return it to them. Intercumia is taken from the Australian tribes, and as I illustrated in my episode The Man from Tallahassee, Locke has an interest for Australian Aboriginals and represents a direct contrast to Ben and his rule. Emile Durkheim talked a lot about society as something sacred, something particularly interesting to look at to the others. Durkheim turned to primitive Australia, studied and connected them to modern ways. Ancient societies have a broad and strong collective conscience. There is uniform agreement on what is right and what is wrong in almost all matters of human conduct. Modern societies, by contrast, are marked by moral individualism. Durkheim argues that the normal behavior is always determined from within the group. Nobody is protesting that Anthony Cooper is tied to a pillar for days, and what is normal for the others is strange or dangerous or illegal to outsiders. However, the thing that Ben wants to show is a human sacrifice, a ritual that have been seen in many religions throughout the world. Today they are very rare, although you get some cults that practice this, such as the Mexican cult by the Hernandez brothers in the 60s, or New Light of God in Panama, who sacrificed 5 children and their mother as late as 2020. What we see in this episode is a Senicide, the killing of the elders. For instance, in Serbia this was called La Pot, where you'd kill one of your parents when they became old and a burden on you, and the village was invited to see this act. Back to the show, when Locke is unable to kill Cooper, Ben announces that Locke is not the person the others thought he was. I love that he walks past Richard amongst others. Richard knows that Locke will still be appointed leader by Ben.
And because I'm your leader.
You're my leader.
That's what you told me.
Look, I certainly don't want to contradict myself, but...
Knowledge he has had for 50 years. Day 87. Locke goes up a hill and then unwraps his bandaged hand while looking over the camp. There are in total 21 tents, which fits in a way with the amount of houses we have at the barracks. There's still uncertainties on how many bedrooms there are, and if there are bedrooms here at these additional houses and so on, but the point is that the camp setup is very consistent with a number of others that stayed at the barracks. Richard Alpert goes up the hill and talks to Locke. He gives him a file on Sawyer and suggests Sawyer could kill Cooper. At some point Ben records his reply to Juliet at the recorder, and at some point Locke will seal it. Day 88. The others break camp, leaving Locke and Cooper at the ruins. Ben tells Locke not to follow unless he is carrying Cooper's corpse. They will now head to a new place called Pascal Flats. In an off-screen scene, I believe that Alex will go and find Carl again. Maybe he's somewhere in the jungle over here. She tells him that they are going to Pascal Flats. Therefore, I believe that Carl walked north again, back to the camping spot from Stranger in a Strange Land, where they docked the previous outrigger, and then took it and traveled, following the ocean on the north side, all the way over here, passing the Palaferry dock, coming down here, passing the Deco village, and then arriving down here, not too far from Pascal Flats. Locke is alone now. He unties his father, puts a bag over his head, and then marches him through the jungle towards the Black Rock. At first he is going to follow the trail left by the others, but then turns, walks south. It's a long walk, hiking between the mountains and the valleys and so on, so he'll be at the Black Rock at evening. At night, Locke reads Sawyer's file. He then goes down south towards the camp. I don't think he takes the Dark Territory route, the quicker one through here. Remember, Rousseau came back very quickly after she showed them the Black Rock, compared to that long walk towards the ship. Day 89. Early in the morning, the rescue team arrives back at the camp. Shortly before dawn, Sawyer goes out to pee and encounters a suspicious Hurley and Jin. This is 3 days after Naomi parachuted. Locke catches Sawyer's attention and takes him to kill Cooper, pretending to have captured Ben. I think they went through here since that would be a bit quicker. Back at the beach camp.
Hello, Hurley.
Can you keep a secret?
Hurley finds Said digging a hole. This is also away from the camp, so I have no idea why he does this. Could be latrine duty. Hurley gets Said to the camp. By the way, I love that the ping pong table is still here. This is the last episode we'll see it. So after today, someone will remove it. Maybe Said hates ping pong with a passion and was burying the ping pong ball and rackets, so the camp decided to take down the table since they couldn't find the ball and the rackets anymore. Naomi tells Said of the discovery of Oceanic 815. She hands him the sat phone and he starts to look at it.
Is that like a radio?
It's like a radio, yes. I've never seen equipment this sophisticated.
Said is completely correct when he says this. The design seems to be loosely based on the iPhone, especially since it has Apple-oriented thumbnails like the Mac OS Home logo. But this is 2004, and the iPhone was released 3 years later. A few Google searches later and I learned that work started on the product in 2004 and they had a beta version. So my deduction is that Widmore's corporation worked together with Apple to produce a few modern satellite phones, a very early iteration of the iPhone that was integrated into these sat phones like a test subject. After all, this isn't the first time Apple has been involved, since there was an Apple computer that was saving the world. Locke and Sawyer arrive at the Black Rock. I'm not a fan that they have a different filming location here instead of Heeakea. They didn't really nail the VFX model on this one, since the original Black Rock was partly a set and VFX, with this one being blue screened into the shot. They enter, Sawyer goes into the brig. A little bit later, Danielle is trekking through the island and she comes to the Black Rock to fetch dynamite. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, she met with Juliet and Jack, talked about how they could defeat the others and devised a plan that Danielle would bring dynamite to the Black Rock. Sawyer discovers Cooper went by the name Tom Sawyer, makes him read his letter and kills him. They venture out of the ship. Locke puts his father in a bag from the Black Rock and puts it near a tree. He goes and tells Sawyer about Ben and Juliet's kidnapping plan, gives Ben's recordings to Sawyer, and starts carrying Cooper's body back to the others, to that point in the trail where he left. The episode was a big mythological one. The next one will also be a large mythological episode. I hope you like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you next week for The Man Behind the Curtain.